Well, we had thought to start with a little bit of music. So I've passed out some song sheets. So those of you who like singing, please sing along. Oh my goodness, yeah, okay, here it is. This I wanted to start with a song entitled Learning How to Love You. And the chorus words you will recognize. They are these. Dear Mama, 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 dear Mama. Any of you who like to sing, please join in. Dear Mama, dear Mama, dear Mama, dear Mama. Here's another song I thought we could do. It's called, oh, is it not even there? Oh, I have to do something about that. I thought I had done this, been in here. Okay, well, let's do a song. Actually, the chorus to this is written by Baba's sister, Mani. It's called Lord of the Universe. Lord of the Universe is my bosom friend. And actually, the way this song happened was, I don't know, 1993 or something, 94. Some of you might recall that, who had been there in those days, that the Baba's women disciples, the women Mandali, would come to Mehrabad and do a women's arti. And so Mani and the other women were there. And in the middle of it, we were doing all this singing going on, and suddenly she turned to me. I don't know why she did this. It's not like she would do this very, customarily. And she said, there's a chorus to a song is going through my head. And she sang it to me, and it was this. Now, how she managed to have a chorus going through her head, and there's all kinds of other singing going on, I really don't know. So I wrote it down, and then I wrote the verses to it. So sing along. If you don't know it, who cares? Sing along. My Lord is the one who will see me through on the road that leads me home. Lord of the universe is my bosom friend, my bosom friend, my bosom friend. He holds my hand on every bend of the
back to us.
It doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah.
It's funny, when I wrote down, I took out my notepad and wrote down what she had been singing. And then I sang it back to her a little bit later that morning. And she said, she corrected me. I actually had gotten part of it wrong.
Whoa.
Is there a, should I have the microphone on, Charlie?
Charlie,
It's on.
Wait. No. We're talking lavalier.
The lavalier?
Lavalier. Charlie, do we need to put that on now?
It's on the table.
Okay. What table? Here? Okay, I don't know how to do it, Charlie. I don't know how to do the shot.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
But it's here.
Yeah.
Okay, do you know how to do it?
I think I may, or I know how to do some of
I
it.
haven't done it yet, so I don't know. Charlie, could you set him up, dear? I don't know how to do it.
Is it like this? I think it might be like this. Is that right?
Yeah.
Has he got it right?
And can
Put that in the pocket, or how can it
Is this
go?
on? It looks, the light is
Yeah,
green.
it's on. Just put it in your pocket. You're ready to go.
Alrighty.
Yeah, yeah.
Portable.
Okay.
We are
Very
ready
nice.
to roll.
Yeah.
Okay, Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Well, thank you for having me here once again, and thank you for coming. The subject, as Mahu indicated it, and as has been announced, is God Speaks as the master framework for Meher Baba's cosmology. And we just had, in fact, a 9-day program up at Marana, up in Northern California, on God Speaks, on the same subject. So we'll be covering some of the same ground. And as many of you will already know from experience, and God Speaks is a colossal masterpiece. I've been reading a lot in the great spiritual traditions of the world, really my whole life, but I've been working on it very intensively, especially for the last 15 years or so, in Sufism and Vedanta and Buddhism and Christian mysticism and other fields. as much as I'm able, I live in Mehrabad, as you may know, and the Arungaon Public Library doesn't always have all the books that I need. And for those of you who have been there, the Arungaon Public Library has yet to be cited.
Right.
So it's not as though it's a great place for me to do research, but I have tried. And I really do think that there is nothing to compare with the account of God and creation that Meher Baba has given. I really do. And this is with all honor to the great masters of the past, the perfect masters, towering figures. But the Avatar has a certain prerogative, I feel. And there's a whole new revelation that he has given. Yes, there have been bits and pieces in the past, and significant pieces of this kind of truth revealed. But Baba's total account is really for the first time in many, many ways. So it's a wonderful treat, actually, to be able to dive into God Speaks. Robert Dreyfus, who some of you will have met. Some of you met Robert, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's been our guest here.
Right. So he's familiar to many. But he met Baba in, I think, 65. And Baba told him he should read God Speaks until it sings in your veins. That's what Baba said to him. And that, I can really attest, that can really happen. To many first-time readers, God Speaks may seem repetitive, long-winded, a very hyper-redundant style. But my experience, and I don't think I'm the only one in this respect, is that when you really get to know it, every part of it is truly revelatory. And even the style of it that Baba has used turns out to be very, very essential, I feel, actually, for coming to understand it. Mm-hmm.
I just was going to say 5 people that are here today last weekend read God Speaks, the core,
Wonderful.
192 pages out loud.
Yeah.
And Aaron,
Fabulous.
his first time going through it ever. And you, how did you feel? Did you feel it singing? Is it okay to ask? I mean,
Sure, yeah.
How did you feel when you finished?
Well, one of the interesting things I did notice was it's very repetitive.
Yes.
I found very interesting when we read in that small increment of time you really see, as opposed to like reading a little bit and down.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But after I finished reading it, we were all humming and singing
Well,
internally. It was amazing afterwards.
Everybody was lit.
Very-
Everybody was really lit up, and Mary Kay and I have been doing this for, I guess, 5 years or 4 years.
Right.
And each one time, like 3 years ago, the energy was like, remember this otherworldly, mental, and it was like this. We could barely speak afterwards. I would say mental, and then not this year, but the year before, it was just sweet, like ha 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 ha, sweet. So it's very interesting. Baba says there's an atomic energy in each word, so right? But anyway, just wanted to...
You know what a phrase that rings to me for describing the style of God Speaks, apart from its content, but just its style, it has in it the ocean voice. You know, that om, that resonating om sound is in it. Of course, I suppose you might say that's in anything that Baba gave, but I find it to be particularly true of God Speaks. And even just the sound of it has that quality. You know, Baba said that all of creation came out of that primordial om, the word of God. And I find that to be very powerful in God Speaks. Part of what we're going to be talking about in these sessions will be some of the repetition of content in God Speaks. And what I have come to see very, very clearly is that it is very purposeful. That actually, over the macro scale of the whole book, the repetition is actually a platform for Baba to bring new themes into the purview. I'll be saying more about that in just a second. But I passed out, did everybody get these handouts? Any new people who came in?
Well, I think we need more of the one with the questions, study questions. For some reason, I only have one on this table.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, I grabbed that one because I didn't have one.
Maybe you're just one.
Yeah, I have more of them up here for anyone.
Is it 2-page?
Yes.
Or that's it. That's all you're
There's a
handing in.
two-pager and there's a multi-pager.
Oh, I don't have that one.
Okay. These are
Oh,
the
it's
other
a-
items. So there's this.
That's a music song, my dear.
This.
No, this is questions, you don't have it.
Hold on. Question.
He doesn't.
Which one?
Okay, I'm gonna distribute everybody.
Okay, these two items. Most people should have them by now. Oh, actually, I need
No,
them
the one
myself.
with the question, they don't. Oh, that we can't give you.
I need the questions. I don't see any questions. The other one.
How's that? Okay, who doesn't have what? I have 2 folders. Dr. Beretti, question.
Was this one for you, or?
I don't need it. I'm fine with that.
You get.
Well, why don't I take one?
There's 3, the
Oh, no, this I have.
singing one, big question.
I don't have.
I don't have singing.
I have the singing one here.
I have one question.
She'll have it.
There you go, that's what you're supposed to
Thanks. That's a
Do you have your questions? The study guide. Anybody need to have, Magnolia, you have some? Here.
So, I'd like to take a look at the whole program over the next, this weekend and next. I put up here, on this whiteboard here, an outline of what we'll be covering today, which I'll come back to in a minute. Can you read this, or is it probably a little too small here in back?
Fine.
Okay, so let me just read through these, and I'd like to read through these more fuller descriptions on the handout. This morning, it's going to be focusing on the historical and textual backgrounds to God Speaks. God Speaks in its historical and actually in its textual contexts. Then this afternoon, we're going to start with evolution and reincarnation. Creation, evolution, reincarnation, and the anatomy of bondage. This would correspond to chapters 2 through 4 of God Speaks. God Speaks has 10 chapters. Tomorrow morning, the involution of consciousness, the journey through the planes, and also the realization of God. I'll take up that topic. And then tomorrow afternoon, the second pass and cosmic architecture in God Speaks. I'll explain in a minute a little more what that means. The second pass refers to chapter 8 of God Speaks. Chapter 8 is very, very long. It's about 2/5 of the whole book. It's about 80 pages. And so there will be taking up why Baba does so much repetition in that section. There's a very real reason for it. This is kind of covering this weekend an introduction to God Speaks, some of the basics of the book. Next weekend, we'll bring up some special topics, and part of the purpose, particularly God Speaks brought it into interrelation with other discourses, particularly from the 1920s. One body of content, of course, is infinite intelligence. Some of you have been part of these discussion groups about infinite intelligence in the past. Lest you might not have seen the book. Looks like this. This is Rosie's copy. It's a heavy book in every way. And it's based on something Baba gave out probably in 1926. But there's a bunch of other stuff that Baba gave out in 1926 too. And so we'll be bringing some of this into relation with God Speaks. So on next Saturday morning, Infinite Intelligence and an Integrated Cosmology of Meher Baba's Teachings. Infinite Intelligence gives quite a different take on reality, actually. So to try to relate that to God Speaks will be the undertaking of that session. And then Saturday afternoon in a week, Baba's creation narrative, how the universe was created. There's an account of that in God Speaks in several places. In the 1920s, Baba said a lot more, actually. And so we'll be looking at that larger story. It's quite fascinating. It'd be wonderful if we had a Baba lover who really was well-versed in astrophysics. There doesn't happen to be such a person present today, is there?
Well, we gotta call our
Debbie, you're
friends
the
up
one.
and find, oh, yeah, it would be me.
Yeah. No, it really would be interesting because a lot of what Baba said in the 1920s is strikingly resonant with some of what's coming up now. Then a week from Sunday morning, we're going to have the whole session on the human form. Actually, Baba has said a lot about that, and it turns out that this human form of ours is deeply significant. Baba actually said that the human form is the only form in existence. Every form is actually the human form folded up, like a stone is actually the human form. But it takes the evolution of consciousness before it manifests completely. So we'll go into some of those questions. These are special topics again, as you can see. And then we're going to conclude next weekend with the 10 states of God. That's chapter 9 in God Speaks. And if there is one single summary of Meher Baba's philosophy or cosmology, whatever you'd want to call it, the most important summary, I would say it's that. Although there are a lot of significant treatments, but that will be the most important in my mind. So we'll be concluding with that next week. So this morning, here's the little write-up here. God Speaks in its historical contexts. God speaks in the context of Meher Baba's life and teachings, the first and second editions, and a projected third and uncompleted edition by Francis Brabazon, a history of the divine theme, the organization of the content into 3 passes, and the sections of the book. Those are the general topics we're going to be talking about, and I have an outline here of going through all of that. Why don't we take a minute and maybe have you introduce yourself in 30 seconds or so, whoever you are.
Elaine Munson, and I've, in the last year, recently relocated from Northern California.
Northern California?
To Southern, yeah.
Oh,
I now
wonderful.
I was living in Oceanside, I just moved to Costa Mesa, closer and closer to the center.
Oh, good. Costa Mesa.
It's easier to get here, so.
Very nice.
Mine hostess.
Yeah, Rosie Choi.
Yeah. The secretary of the board lives in Redondo Beach,
And
yes.
actually lived in Korea for 21 years, where I raised my children, 2 of whom are Baba lovers, so I'm delighted
Yeah.
and happy to be here today.
And the mother of Mark Choi, by the way. If anybody doesn't know Mark Choi.
If you can believe it.
Yeah. The founder of Meher Haven, actually, in Mariposa. So wonderful. Beautiful family.
Mary Kay Shubat Hage, longtime Baba lover and member of this center.
Retired teacher.
Yes.
Program committee member, and she was service chair
Director.
for quite a while.
For 2
Yeah.
years, she actually helped serve them.
That's enough.
And beautiful soul.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very much. Grandmama.
Yeah.
Grandma. Amahu. In my false self. What do we call it that? I'm a mother of 12 years old. My son is Surush, who's been into India 7 times. And he's 12 years old. I serve as a president of this center, Mir Baba Center, and also I coordinate most of the efforts of the bookstore because we don't have anybody else to do it. But I'm very grateful to be here. We have a wonderful Baba family, and we'll do what we can to make it happen. And I'd like to welcome Ward one more time. Happy to be here. And Charlie?
I'm Charlie, film all up for the seminar.
How long you been with Baba? A little bit more.
That's all I can
He was.
Okay.
bring to
You
bear
were-
for the moment.
Yeah, okay. Wonderful.
Mahmoud Arshain. I'm the father of 3 children, all of them are Baba lovers.
Very nice. And the wife too.
And my wife also.
And he's also a psychiatrist who hypnotized everyone, talked him into being on the board.
Did you hypnotize the board?
He did, he did.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Actually, he has that role of hypnotizing people and bring them along.
I'm Carol Cunningham, and I'm a local Baba lover, and I've been with Baba since 1986. And I recently purchased a second home in Mariposa, and it is a trailer, and it is in a trailer park. And I'm from Oklahoma, so all that's bad enough. And the name of the place is Idle Wheels.
That's wonderful.
Anyway, I go up there quite a bit.
And the name of the street that you live on
Oh my
is...
gosh, I live at 107 Easy Street.
So, Carol has arrived.
Yeah, I just say I'm going up to Easy Street.
Very nice.
It's great, and I'm also a ward groupie because I just had 9 days.
She was one of the 9 days
Says if
study
you need, I
program.
can give you any help on the test. I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, wonderful.
My name is Jay. I just moved from Northern California. I'm in South Pasadena now. And just recently got introduced to Mehrbal's teachings. I did a Google search on him. And I've been going to the lecture series, the youth lecture series every Tuesday.
Where do you work?
I live in Pasadena.
Pasadena. Very nice.
Yeah, so he's going to Aaron and Michael's Young Persons Discourse series every
That sounds
Tuesday.
wonderful.
My name's Aaron, new to Baba, a year now, and live down the street and work catering. And started a wonderful young adult in this group.
Very nice.
You have a discourse meeting here at the center on... In Asheville, where I spend a lot of time, there's a meeting on discourse meetings also on Tuesday. I'll have to get into it too.
Well, they were very inspired, you know, and they plan on meeting Aaron and Michael and their group every week, a minimum for 6 months. So that's quite a commitment, and it's really blossoming in a beautiful way.
Next year at Mariana, the 9-day program is going to be on the discourses, actually. We've been doing a 9-day study program. It'll be in September again. It'll be focused on the discourses, although it'll bring all these other materials into bear also.
There's scholarships available for that, and camping, very passionate.
Where's Mariposa?
It's the gateway to Yosemite.
6 hours drive from here.
You can camp while you're doing the 9 days.
Well, they have camping as the housing there.
It's about a 300-acre center, and it's about 3 or 4 miles up from the valley, up into the foothills.
Beautiful.
Sierras.
About 30 Baba lovers live up there.
I'm Sean. We're brothers.
Yay, Sean.
I'm an actor here in LA and came to Baba about a year ago as well. And
Very nice.
happy to be here.
How much older are you than Aaron?
How much older do you think I am?
Are you twins?
No, he's
2
He
years.
has a
2
facial
years.
hair right now, so it makes him look a little older than he is. I'm 8 years older than him. I'm
8 years
33.
older.
Aaron's 24.
Oh.
33?
That's 9.
It's good for acting. I mean,
Yeah.
9 years old. Very good. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Actually, Aaron looks older just because he's got beard.
Actually, I can do that.
Yeah, I mean older than 24.
I'm sure his soul is much older than mine. So that's why I'm
Yeah, it's and Deborah, and then Georges.
I'm Deborah, I'm the program director and sound technician, and singer-songwriter and blues and R&B, and a lover of Meher Baba, and I'm crazy about awards singing. I love, anyway, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah.
Baba.
Georges?
Georges Sapros. I know about Baba from 63 already. I was at the beginning from Baba Center when it was created. And all the time coming here, wherever it was. My children, 2 children, they don't want to know anything about Baba. So,
And Jurgis is a noted sculptor and artist.
Well, the Lithuanian galleries have his work. All the bust of Baba here and the feet. Georges did it, and he did a sculpture. While living in India.
Yeah, this one at the Mayor Pilgrim Retreat.
Yeah, the Pilgrim Retreat. He worked on it in marble for 6 months.
And
in
Boba's
residence
room.
there.
7 months.
Seven. And it's a very, and we are so lucky to have him as our part of our community.
And he's now teaching art.
Yeah.
Where's that?
My place.
Rotating. Magnolia?
No. What?
We're doing the introduction.
Oh.
It's Magnolia.
Magnolia.
I'm Magnolia. I met Baba about maybe 40 years ago. And I'm also coming on Tuesdays and really enjoying the discourses with Aaron. We're intimate group. I'm an entrepreneur. I just opened a new center in downtown. And I'm really happy to be here.
Very nice.
What kind of center?
Very nice.
A charitable community arts center. It's called That Space. So if you see me on Facebook, go on there and post it.
Just get the handout for it.
Wow.
Kathy?
I am Kathy Brilliant that Brilliant Gus was my husband. He died there 2 years ago. And I am just forward on it. Just forward on it. Yeah. Just that.
Very nice.
Jay's here.
Jay, your turn. Introduce yourself, please. Where are you coming from?
I'm Jay from Redondo Beach. Let's see, I'm excited to learn about God Speaks, His Word, through staying in our complex. And I have some questions from page 107.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, okay, I hope you'll all feel very free to speak up and participate and ask any questions that you've got. Don't hesitate at all about that. If there's something that I'm talking about that I'm presupposing everybody knows it and you don't, just say it, just speak it out. Don't hold back at all. This is for you, of course. So now this morning's session, we're not really going to be getting into the substance of God Speaks so much. That will really begin this afternoon. But I wanted to talk about the background of it and looking at the book from the outside, you might say. The first thing I just wanted to take a look at how the whole book is organized. I know this is going to be a little hard to see. Let me see if I can do something about this. Let's try this. Is that better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. This is the main substance. This is the table of contents. You could always just open the book and look at it yourself if you like. As you can see, there are 10 chapters, which are called 10 parts. And the fundamental organization of God Speaks, it appears to me, is this. It goes through the divine theme 3 times. Now, what is the divine theme? We don't have Rano's. There's a chart by Rano Gailey. We'll be looking at it in due course, but you may be. It's in God Speaks.
That one? No.
Yes, actually, here it is. It is here. This one?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me put it up here. Yeah, if I may. Thanks. The curators of the Center Mind might put it in here.
No, do what you want.
Okay. We'll try not to drop it. Great. Just put that there. This illustrates the divine theme. Can you see it back there? Anyway, the journey of the soul. Yeah, it's chart 8A in the book if you want to look more closely.
Page 190.
Here you see the Jivatma, the drop soul, emerging out of the beyond state of God. It progresses through the journey of evolution of consciousness until it arrives at human form. In human form, which is down here in the chart, you pass through a cycle of many lifetimes, actually 8,400,000 in human form, until you enter into the spiritual path and begin the involutionary journey, which is a passage through first the subtle sphere and then the mental sphere. And the 6th plane of consciousness of the mental sphere, you see God face to face, you see God directly. And that culminates in the realization of I am God. The Vedantic expression is Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Or as Mansur al-Halaj said, a great Sufi perfect master, Anil Haq, I am the truth. And with that realization, the journey has ended. As best I know, and I've looked all over the place, this is the first time this has ever been explained. The avatar of the age. That is the entire journey of the soul from beginning to end. So when we're talking about the journey of the soul, this is another way of characterizing it. It's the biography of the soul. That is the biography of you and me, mate. This is us. You know, when we, if someone were to say, who are you? Tell me your life story. Let's say Jay or Elaine and Ward. I'd say, well, I was born in 1952 and thus in such a place, and I grew up and I did this and did that. I'd tell my life story. But if you were to find me 100 years ago in my previous birth, or the birth before that, I wouldn't be telling that story at all, now would I? In fact, I have no idea who I was 100 years ago. Nor will I tell you the story of who I will be 200 years from now. The point is, this life that we're living, how real is it? If we've lived millions of lifetimes, this is just one little blip in our life story. Our story is this. This is really our biography. We just don't happen to remember it. So it appears to me that Meher Baba is the avatar of the age. In this age of where all the cultures of the world are meeting, and often not meeting particularly harmoniously all the time, and you have these worldviews coming into encounter and sometimes clashing and great confusion in the world. It's as if the Father of creation has returned and said, do you want to know who you are? Do you want to know who you are? It always reminds me of one of these folk tales of some little boy who's separated from his parents at the age of 1 year old and is brought up, by strangers, and then gets separated and wanders here and wanders there, and then at a certain point meets this man who says, do you want to know who you are? You are my son. You are my daughter. You are, in fact, God. This is where the avatar of the age, for the first time, has related this. It's true in some traditions, such as Vedanta in Hinduism. The truth has been explained that I am God, that the soul is one with God. In most religions, that affirmation is not made, in fact. But Baba has told the whole story now for the first time. This is the foundation of God Speaks, the divine theme. It's not the first time Baba recounted the story of the divine theme. In fact, Baba started telling that. You get the divine theme, what the divine theme is, right? It's the story of the journey of the soul. So I'm going to be talking about that for all of these sessions, the divine theme. Baba first related this in the 1920s. In fact, in Infinite Intelligence, Baba sets forth the divine theme. He didn't call it that then. He first used the term in the 1940s. But when Baba, and I'll be giving a little history of the divine theme in a minute. But God Speaks is the master exposition on this subject. It's the biography of the soul in capital letters. It's like the great exposition of this theme in human history as far as I can see. If I'm mistaken about this, please somebody let me know so that I don't go around putting my foot in my mouth any longer or than I have been already. But I think this is the first time that this has been revealed to humanity, what our true story is. Now, so that's the core of God Speaks, and it appears to me that God Speaks is organized in this way. There are 10 chapters, right? The first we'll be looking at later this morning or maybe at the beginning of this afternoon. It lays foundations and gives a definition of terms. And the last chapter is it's a one-page. The term for it is a palinode. It's kind of a retraction, you might say, in a certain way.
Great.
Yeah, no, it's a very significant part. The core of the book then is parts 2 through 9, right? So the first, Baba goes through the story of the divine theme 3 times specifically. The first time is chapters 2 to 7. Okay, I call that the first pass. Actually, Baba relates the story of the involution of consciousness from gross consciousness through subtle and mental consciousness to God realization. Baba goes through that 3 times, chapters 5, 6, and 7. Each one of them goes through involution in a different way. But cumulatively, this is the first passage through the divine theme. Then in chapter 8, I don't know what page that begins, page 80 or something like that, depends on what version you have. Baba starts over, and he starts over with the whim of God, the creation of the universe. So when people are reading it, they might think, well, Baba's repeating himself. Well, yeah, he is. He's starting to tell the whole story over. But this is about, 80 pages long or so. How many pages? Something like that.
Chapter 10?
Chapter 8.
It is. It's like 88 pages or 81.
81 pages or something, yeah.
88
pages, yeah.
80 to 169 in my copy.
Okay, so that's almost 90 pages, between 80 and 90. It's about 2/5 of the book or so, maybe a little more than that. And Baba goes through the divine theme again, but this time he has a very different emphasis, actually. This time, and this is the expression I would use, he's telling the story of the divine theme in context of its cosmic architecture. I'm using cosmic architecture to designate the eternal principles of creation. For example, God as creator, preserver, destroyer, or the nature of God as knowledge, power, and bliss. We'll be going into those things tomorrow afternoon. As the grand framework upholding this entire creation, he's telling the story of the journey of the soul within that setting, which he didn't do before. In a way, this would be a way of describing it. Let's say we're telling a day in the life of Aaron, okay? And you've got a camera. You're going to be the producer as his brother. So, you have a camera and you might look a close-up Aaron's face, or then suddenly you're 40 feet away or looking from above. In other words, it's a fairly close and fairly human perspective of the story. The divine theme is being told in that way. from a reasonably close perspective. But in chapter 8, when the cosmic architecture is there, it's as if you're seeing all of a sudden there's Aaron and there's the Sierra Mountains, or else you're looking from, 100 miles from a satellite or something, or it's like a Chinese landscape painting. You're looking at the story of the journey of the soul in its grand architecture, in the large perspective of things, which Baba had not done the first time. So that's the second. I'm trying to give you a sense of what it seems to me the organization of the book is, the total book. And the third pass is in the chapter, The 10 States of God. It's about 30 pages long, and it's built on a chart, which you'll find there, the 10 States of God chart. It seems that this is where God Speaks started, was with that chart. It seems that Baba created that chart first, before he had written anything, as a matter of fact. And this is the third telling of the divine theme. But what's different this time is that Baba has statified it, so to speak, to invent that word. He's turned it into perennial, permanent states of God. What we've had before is a story, a narrative, right? Now he's showing that narrative as states that are always there. And he's very systematically presenting what those eternal states of God are. That's the final summation of God Speaks, it seems to me. It's quite magnificent, actually. And that will be our topic in the very final session of next weekend. So,
Would be an example of what you just said, the last third part?
About the states.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he'll talk about God in the beyond state is the second state, and then the third is God as creator, preserver, destroyer. And the fourth state is God as the embodied soul. Yeah. So, and then the fifth state will be God as evolution, and the sixth state is God as reincarnation. Okay, all of those we've gone through before. It's not like we haven't. But now it's being presented in a very categorical way, and also we're not seeing it just as a story that you've gone through. We're seeing it as eternal states of God. You see, God is actually outside of time, right? And a story is within time. So until that point, and you see how the beauty of this design here, until that time, in God Speaks, Baba has been relating God Speaks as a story within time, so that we can relate to it, because we're in time. We like stories. People like stories. Okay, kids, Baba, the father of creation, says, you like a story? Well, I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you your own story. But now, at the end of it, he's showing it not as a story, but as something eternal and beyond time, as states that are always there, in the timelessness of the eternal present, so to speak. I think it's quite a magnificent stroke on Baba's part, where suddenly you see it in a complete... You see what the difference? It's out of time now. These things are always there. These states are always there. Because in truth, there is no time. And Baba gives us that perspective, yeah.
Now I realize why I get confused around those pages that I mentioned is because he starts breaking time down and he loses me now.
Yeah, I know. We're used to a narrative, but he's getting it in a completely different way there. It's also very, very deep and very, very subtle, especially at certain places.
But the thing that's kind of cool about it is you can really go into each part and study it.
That's right.
That's the main, you can actually study.
Yeah. And it really clarifies the account that Baba has given until that time. I really think God Speaks is absolutely stunning book. There is nothing like it I've read a lot now. And there are great perfect masters like Ibn Arabi, the great perfect master, or, Shankaracharya, all honored. I mean, what to say to souls like that? But they haven't explained this. It really is the prerogative of the avatar to give this account, it seems to me. And here's another thing, before we're jumping into the specifics of it, is I'm trying to persuade the Baba world of the virtues of this word. And all of these sessions I've been doing a lot of these seminars in the last couple of years, and the word, I talk about Meher Baba's philosophy. That word positively sticks in my throat. It's, Baba often would, I remember one of his definitions of philosophy was easy things made difficult.
Yeah.
And there was another time where there was this learned guy who had been reading all this highfalutin philosophy, and he was trying to explain it to Baba, and he got completely tied up and confused and everything, and finally Baba said, "Tell me in 5 words everything that you have learned from all these books." And he couldn't do it, and Baba gave him the 5 words: "I have not learned anything." So, I mean, to talk about this as a philosophy it's a beautiful word in its roots. Philosophy is philos, which means, or phileo means in Greek to love, and sophos or sophia means truth or wisdom. Sophos means truth. It's a beautiful word in its origins, but it's been a long time since it really meant that. And the other kinds of words we have, this is the word that I've been trying to use and hope that you'll like it, is Darshana, and I'll explain why that word. Philosophy leaves out God. It suggests an approach to matters of ultimate truth based on the intellect only. Well, God speaks is not from the intellect. God speaks is a revelation from God, and that's quite different than that. Sometimes the word cosmology gets used, and it's a good word, but cosmology designates the cosmos, but it leaves out God again. Where's God in cosmology? It's not there. So it's good if we're talking about below God, but it's not an adequate word if we want to bring God into the picture. There are some other words that are metaphysics and ontology. I don't know if you guys really want to talk about this. I've wrestled with this a lot, but metaphysics is often used, a study of what is true and what is real. Okay, but again, it sounds so philosophical, and it doesn't really bring God into the story. Sometimes people will say Baba's explanations. Okay, but about what? He might have been explaining, how to find a must, or how he wants you to behave in darshan, or he could be explaining. It doesn't say anything about the subject matter. So my suggestion is the Sanskrit word darshana, and having as its root meaning vision or sight. This word was used in classical Indian literature to designate the basic schools of Indian thought in their approach to matters of ultimate truth. Darshana is like they have Meher Baba's darshan. What that literally means is to see him, actually. It's a beautiful word. But the word darshana is used, not just by me, but in standard accounts of Indian thought, to indicate a basic approach or seeing towards the ultimate reality of things. So Vedanta, are some of you acquainted with what Vedanta is? Or if we were, it's not a branch of Hinduism, but if it were, Sufism would be another example of that, of a darshana. It's a fundamental window to reality. So I would prefer to talk about Meher Baba's darshana rather than his philosophy, because those other words are just not up to the task. So if you guys don't mind, when I mean Baba's darshana, I mean his account, his revelations about what is true and what is real. And again, when we're talking about a revelation that comes from God, or the God-man, the truth, reality, cannot be understood. And that's just plain the fact of the matter. It can never be understood. It is impossible. And for that reason, it can never be expressed either. No matter what you say, even the best formulation is... Buddha gave a great analogy of this once. At least it's in the Lotus Sutra, where there's a father who has a bunch of children. He loves his children very, very much. And one day he's standing there, the children are all playing in the house. and he's outside, and he sees that the house is on fire, and all the children are going to die. And he says, "Children, come out! You're going to die. The house is burning." But the children are all absorbed in playing with their toys, so they don't want to come. And they what a fire is, they don't know. They don't have any idea what he's talking about, so they don't really listen, and they go on playing. Mm-hmm. So recognizing the state of affairs, this is the Lotus Sutra now. The father says, "Children, look at the toys I have. They're much better than your toys." I think he talks about chariots and war horses, the sorts of toys they would have liked it. I don't know what it would be now, iPod or what the kids play with. It's much better than what you've had. And the children look up, and they come running out of the house. And when they come out, they realize their father has actually lied to them. But then they see the house that was burning, and they don't blame him for having told him that. And Buddha said, everything that I tell you is like this. It's ultimately not true. Because when you know the truth, there are no words for it. But these are means to help deliver you from the ignorance that you are in. So that's true of Meher Baba. Isn't that a beautiful story, the Lotus Sutra? And that's true of every formulation of the truth, necessarily. The only way to know the truth is to have the I am God experience. That's the only way to do it. But the avatar, when he comes, there's actually some of this, things we'll be publishing from the 20s, where Baba talks about this. It's like a formulation that is revelatory and helps to awaken humanity so that they can approach it and ultimately realize it for themselves. So it's the best possible formulation for a given time and age. So that's what God Speaks is. In this age that we're in, humanity needs to have some idea of what is true. I mean, look at the mess the world is in, with everybody fighting about everything and disagreeing about everything and having different opinions about everything. And there isn't a foundation right now. So Baba has given a foundation that is really adequate to our needs. At least I certainly feel so. If you take Baba's full account, it is deeply satisfying. Now, if you want to really know that it is true, well, there's no shortcut. You've just got to get God realized. That's what it takes. But, so there's a faith that's entailed. I think you do have to take it on faith at a certain point. But it is very, very convincing. It is very, very satisfying, the account Baba has given. And Baba has given it in many places, like in the discourses that some of you are reading right now. There's a wonderful account there. God Speaks is the most thoroughly developed philosophical, darshanic version of that. And I think it's going to serve for the next 700 years for all humanity as the master framework into which all other understandings and revelations will ultimately be fitted. So that's kind of our project here. We can handle that. The LA group is up to the job, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, did you want to?
Just one quick question I had. As you started on this with the first, term, vocabulary, the idea came and then you elaborated on it. It came to me that, Baba said God cannot be explained.
Right.
He's got to be experienced.
That's right.
So then, how are we going to get to know God as we are reading this book?
Yeah.
Then you brought the idea of revelation, which I really can relate to that.
Yeah.
Is that, based on your experience, would that be accurate or kind of a good idea that one says that once you read at least some part of this book, you begin to, it goes beyond the state of mind, you're beginning to experience a gist of God as who He is, can be And I like to share very quickly is this book is what brought me to Baba. So I have a great respect for that. Through this, he revealed himself to me as a creator.
Yeah.
And coming from Muslim background, I had the worst time of accepting God in human form.
Right.
But going back to my question, can we say such thing, or it's too much?
Yeah, I know. What can I say? I would hope so. I'm just a gross conscious soul. I'm sort of a parrot. I read books, and so I don't have any gnosis myself.
I see. Okay.
So I couldn't say from my own part, but I certainly have to believe that's true. And I was a professor for a long time, and I know really, really well what arid intellectualism is like. Arid, sterile, dry, deadly intellectualism. And this is nothing like that. It's my experience. I mean, you guys would know as well as me, but I find God speaks in all of Baba's accounts to be full of light. And I don't know, it's my line of work, so of course I would feel this way, but I will say this, it's not, in the language of God speaks may often be abstract, that's true. But really speaking, what Baba is talking about is not remote from the lives we live as human beings at all. The things he's talking about are very fundamental. I mean, for heaven's sakes, it's our own life story that he's giving. That's what it's about. It's actually telling us what our own journey is. And even when we get to chapter 8, let's say, the triune nature of God to anticipate is knowledge, power, and bliss. And so far as I know, Baba was the first one to have really revealed this point. But look at those things, knowledge, power, bliss. Aren't those relevant to us? Like, I need to get to the LA Center, but I don't know how to get there. Do you have the directions? Knowledge. Oh, my car ran out of gas. Power. Oh, I missed the meeting. I'm feeling miserable. Bliss. These are basic to our lives as human beings. We're always dealing with these things constantly. Another basic cosmic principle Baba gives is the states of being sound sleep, dream, and wakefulness. Those three states are not just psychological states. They're cosmic principles, actually. Well, aren't those relevant to us? For heaven's sakes, we do it every day. We go through those cycles. So actually, Baba's Darshana, his account of things, is dealing with root terms that are directly related to our lives as human beings. The language of God speaks might make you think otherwise sometimes. It gets, there's long sentences, oh my God, I'm at sea. I can't figure out what he's talking about. But he's actually talking about things that are very close to our experience, which is not true of most philosophy.
If you get into Buddhism, it's the lineage of this and the divine path and religion. It's so cold the way it's written. It's really, if I try to read, I go, whereas this is just got beauty and it's fluid, very different forms, saying.
God speaks is constantly, in my experience, is giving you these extraordinary vistas, It's like you're driving, I don't know where you drive from here, you go up some mountains and all of a sudden you can see peaks and landscapes and stuff like that. God speaks is full of that. It's, I will say from my own experience, because I've read the book so much, it gets to be very intoxicating. It really does. It might seem abstract at first, but there comes a time where it's not anymore. It's beautiful. It's deeply, deeply beautiful. And I love all those long sentences. Of course, I was a professor of Old English poetry, so I'm a weird specimen to begin with. But there are other people who don't, I am not the only one to have this experience at all. It becomes very intoxicating, as Baba said to Robert Dreyfus. Now here's a little bit of, I'm just going to give you a little picture of Baba's, the 40, 50 years of Baba's avataric mission and the different literary works, discourses that he gave out. Just look at this quickly. Can you see this, or is this too small? Can you see? I don't know, Kathy, can you see it? Is it too small?
It's a little small.
I can expand, but I think if I do this, I'll lose a lot of it.
No, it's okay, go for it.
Okay.
Just the way it is.
In the 1920s, this was before Baba went to the West. He gave out a lot of material, and it's only coming to light now. The most important item is what's called the book, which Baba started writing on 13th of July 1925. Did anything strike you about that date? 13th of July 1925.
Baba's silence.
July 10th, 1925.
Yeah.
3 days after Baba began his silence, he started writing the book. And he finished up in November, or it could even be December of 1926. And on the 1st or 2nd, I forgot now, January 1927, right after that, Baba stopped writing, actually, and never wrote again, except to sign his name sometimes. So the book was written during the only period where Baba began his silence and Baba was writing. He would write on chalk on slate, as a matter of fact. Okay, so if any of you have the book, it's time. All right, Jay, come on. Time to bring it out. We've held it for long. It's whereabouts, and I don't know, maybe in the back row at your discourses meeting, you guys are sitting on it. Yeah, that's what they're reading. Once they've interpreted, then they'll explain it to us. Okay, in God's hand. Anyway, this is in Baba's handwriting, 39 pages. This got published a few years ago. You probably have copies here.
We don't actually, it's out of
It's out of
published.
print.
It's available online. You can get it used.
Yeah.
But
If you could find it.
We've got to
We
get
don't
it.
carry it, Sherry or doesn't carry it.
Yeah, there's a
It's
copy.
in
Here, can I
India.
brandish it?
Whoever have it, they have
I'm
it.
not going to do any disasters by walking. Yeah, this is it. So this is in Baba's own handwriting in probably 1925. Some of this material. In 1926, in the early months, Baba dictated, at least as I understand it, he dictated the what were called the intelligence notebooks. These about 250 pages of content that got published as Infinite Intelligence. Last year, the 2 weekends were on that subject. Which is actually, Infinite Intelligence and God Speaks are the same kind of work. And it has the same kind of long sentences and repetition that God Speaks does.
Only 3 months? Baba did it? 4 months?
It's a guess, March through July. That's a very good guess.
You know, Infinite Intelligence has more of a mystical expression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives a lot that's not in God Speaks. And next weekend we might talk about a bit of that.
Does it have more charts?
Huh?
Does it have more charts?
It does have a lot, and it probably does have more charts, as a matter of fact. I think one of the tasks for people interested in this topic in the coming decades will be to integrate Infinite Intelligence with God Speaks.
Maybe we can do that next year for here.
And
We'll
we'll get
talk
into it.
about
We'll get into it a bit next weekend.
Yeah,
We'll have
yeah,
one
we'll talk
session.
about
The
it.
session on in your things, an integrated cosmology. I think it's the 5th session. We're going to be doing some of that. Yeah, Carol.
I don't know if we have it in our bookstore, probably. And it is also available online, used for a little bit less. When I got mine used, it was pristine. I don't think they're going to get open.
Which one?
Infinite Intelligence.
Infinite Intelligence. Used less.
You may find it in eBay or Charlie do that.
And it's still in print for anyone who wants to pay the full price.
You know, Infinite Intelligence was written at the very same time as the book.
It was.
So why would Baba have been writing 2 separate works at the same time?
Yeah.
Maybe they're
So
not.
could and I know it's been discussed before, Infinite Intelligence be the book?
Yeah, I know that there is a school of opinion that holds up. I'm not a proponent of that school of opinion, but that's a whole topic in its own.
If you were writing the book, would you stop and write another book at
Well,
the same time?
You know, one of the Meher Baba's characteristics was that he could multitask. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. So I think it's quite possible. He was giving at the same time these Tiffin lectures, and they're quite different. This is, by the way, another book that's going to be coming out. Shariar Press has a backlog, so it would have come out in 2015, but they're publishing Mani's biography that year and can't do two such books at
Do you
once.
know how much it's going to be or how big?
I don't know. It'll be a substantial book. Yeah. But these are talks to Baba's Mandalay from April 1926 to August 1927. This is at Mehrabad. You know Mehrabad, right? It's was Baba's great ashram in that period, and his tomb is there now. Also in the next year, December 27 to January 1928, I just started working on this last month. Baba gave a bunch of talks to the Meher Ashram boys. Baba started a school at Mehrabad at that time, and some of you here knew well Esfandiar Vasale. I don't know, do those of you? Yeah, he was a member of the Meher Ashram, and out of that group, a lot of them started having experiences of the planes, and even up to the sixth plane, one or two of them, of consciousness. And Baba, it was a very dramatic phase of Baba's work. Well, during this period, Baba was giving them talks, and my God, the things he was explaining to them, unbelievable. He had never told the Mandalay these things that I know of.
Who took it down? Who wrote it down?
I don't know. I might have been Ramju, but I'm not sure. We just have a typed version of it.
I apologize to keep continuing to add to this, but there is a story entitled Sobs and Throbs, and it is in
Ramju's diary.
Manju's diary, which is a book that we have. And Sobs and Throbs used to be printed separately, but now that's where it is. Ramju's.
Yeah, it tells a lot of the drama of what happened in that period. But Baba was, one of the things we will get into tomorrow morning, Baba told them a lot about the planes of consciousness that he never said in God Speaks, actually. So when we get to that tomorrow morning, I'll be bringing some of that in.
Wow.
And it turned out to be very relevant because a whole bunch of them immediately went to the planes of consciousness. Those are good students, huh? Baba says, the third plane has 3 heavens. And they said, yes, sir. Because a bunch of them went to, within that very week, actually, unbelievably, within that very week, a bunch of them started to have experiences of those planes. So that's another thing from this period. And there was a monthly magazine, the Meher Message, that was published for 3 years that had a bunch of Baba's discourses, probably dictated to Ramju Abdullah. So the point is, there was a lot of stuff from the 1920s. But then what happened was Baba started traveling to the West, starting in 1931. In fact, in 1932, he came here for the first time to Los Angeles, Hollywood. And I hope, may I use this expression to take to no offense, as what many of us are Westerners, he really dumbed everything down. He built it up again. The West was very, very, very capable in many departments of life, but its strong suit was not spirituality at the time. So Baba really, really simplified everything, and he got rid of a lot of what he had explained before, and a lot of it he never went back to again. But I don't actually, that's not fair to say dumbed down, because the messages he gave were really, really magnificent. But they were very, very universal and very, very simple and very fundamental. And they could be understood by Westerners perfectly well. And from that point, in the 1930, 31, and 32 is when he really did that. Baba then began to develop his explanations again. You might say starting from the ground up. And between 1938 and 1942, 43, Baba had published his discourses, which you'll be acquainted with. They were published in the Meher Baba Journal, one discourse in each issue, sometimes two discourses. And those are, they give a lot of metaphysical, philosophical, darshanic content, all from the point of view of the seeker of God. They're very much, and they're not sectarian in any way, and they don't presuppose a spiritual background very much, and they don't use much difficult vocabulary. Okay, you have to get to know what karma is, and you have to get to know what sanskaras are. There are a few things, but not much. So that really it's quite universal for anyone seeking God or seeking the truth. You don't even have to know who Meher Baba is. You could read it with full benefit without that. So Baba really presented something for humanity at large, and they get quite subtle and quite sophisticated. Baba had really built it up again. And then in the 1950s, this was really the great period for publishing in Baba's discourses. God Speaks. I would have to say, if there's one book of Meher Baba's that's most important, it would have to be God Speaks. Discourses also, but I would say God Speaks is really preeminent. But there are a lot of other things published at that time, just like Life at Its Best. God to Man and Man to God is an edition of the discourses. Listen, Humanity has a whole body of discourses from Baba. Beams from Meher Baba on the Spiritual Panorama. This book is worth knowing about because after God Speaks was published, Carol has it there. People wrote a lot of questions, and I think Ivy Deuce and Don Stevens maybe, who were the original editors of God Speaks, put these questions to Baba, and Baba gave out answers to questions that had been raised. They were written up by Dr. Deshmukh, who was the one who wrote up the discourses, and they got published as that book. So Beams is actually quite related to God Speaks, so that's a good thing to know. This would be the really greatest single period of Baba's publishing messages and discourses. Of course, he declared his avatarhood in 1954. So after declaring his avatarhood, he gave out a large body of material. And in the 60s, it very much slowed down. The Everything and the Nothing was the only book under Baba's own name that was published at that time. So God Speaks, in a sense, represents the culmination of Baba's discourses, Baba's teachings over the years. It's the greatest single expression. Baba, when it was published, Baba said it was the first and last book of its kind. So it's really the centerpiece, and I feel it will serve as the master framework for Meher Baba's Darshana, using that word again, Meher Baba's account of God and creation. There are many other things. God Speaks does not have everything in it at all. For example, there's Maya. The word Maya never comes up.
Oh, yeah.
In the supplement it does, but in the 10 chapters you won't find it at all. And also, try sometime looking for the word love. You won't find it in God Speaks. When we did something at Marana, the last session about God Speaks was, what's love got to do with it? What happened to love? You know, this is a funny thing. If you knew about Meher Baba from his explanations, his interactions with Etsahavas and Darshans, his short messages, what you would get is love is overwhelmingly the most important theme in Meher Baba's message to humanity. And if you were in God Speaks, you would not get that at all. So if 300 years from now we had two bodies of material, God Speaks and we didn't know who the author was, and all these accounts of Meher Baba's dealings with people, we would think God Speaks must have been written by somebody else. So it's quite surprising. Baba's master philosophical account does not touch on the subject of love at all, hardly. So that's an interesting question we could take up and resolve for the Baba world before these 2 weekends are over. So this is where a brief picture of where God speaks fits into the broader body of Meher Baba's. Do you know the word oeuvre? The French word oeuvre. It's terrible. There's no good word for this, but his literary works are his discourses over the course of his lifetime. In my opinion, its position, it really holds the central place. But a lot of other things need to be brought into it if we want a full account of what Baba gave to humanity. But God speaks in discourses together will be a good balance. Do you want to bring up anything? I was going to now start going over some of the history of the composition of God Speaks.
I just walked in, so I don't know what you said before, but once upon a time I majored in science, and God Speaks reminds me of the science or math book.
Yes, it does.
Just that kind of way of presenting things.
Well, I was mentioning, I think one of the projects that will need to be done will be to integrate stuff from the 1920s with God Speaks. And Infinite Intelligence was probably dictated in 1925, and there was a lot of stuff Baba gave out between then and 1926, 27, 28. In 1926 he dictated it, actually 1925, 1926. That period in the history of science, some of the greatest revolutions of the last several hundred years happened then, like quantum mechanics was pioneered by Heisenberg and Niels Bohr and these other people, and also the Big Bang Theory was articulated.
Oh yeah, right.
I think in the guy Georges Lemaitre, French scientist.
Well, you know what's great too is in God Speaks is that it confirms Darwin's theory of evolution.
Yeah.
Which some people still, aliens and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool too.
So when the Big Bang, you know the Big Bang Theory, right? The universe was, what is it? I think it's 13.7 billion years ago, something like that, which is now universally agreed on. But before that, and that was really about 1929, I think Hubble was the one who first really articulated that. The view among scientists was the universe was eternal. There was no beginning. It had always been there. But then they actually discovered that it had a beginning. Well, it was right at that period, 26, that Baba was explaining a lot of these things. How it actually emanates from the Om point, and it's the Word of God produces it, as a matter of fact. And God Speaks also returns to that. So a lot of the huge revolutions in science occurred in the 1920s, right at the very time that Baba was giving a lot of his foundational explanations at Mehrabad. So actually we're going to have a session on creation, Baba's creation narrative next weekend, Saturday afternoon. We'll talk about some of these things, about there's other stuff besides what is in God Speaks, about the creation of the universe. But going from there to the creation of God Speaks. Now this is a little bit of the story of it. Oh, and I had meant to pass out something else. I have some copies. I probably don't have enough copies for everybody. I might. I'm probably a little bit short. Anyway, if you want one, why don't you take one? This from Ira Dietrich. You know Ira Dietrich? He's the president of Sufism Reoriented. He wrote actually, I probably should have one.
Too late.
Just so that I can reference it. I can give it at the end of the session. He's wrote this history of God Speaks. Sufism Reoriented is the publisher of God Speaks. It was in 1955 when Baba first had it published. So I was going to give a little bit of information based on that. Now, God Speaks originated actually in the late 1940s. Baba started dictating content for what he actually had wanted to be this to his disciple Abdul Ghani, Do you know Abdul Ghani?
Yeah, Ghani.
Dr. Ghani. He was one of Baba's great disciples.
Song of the New Life.
Oh, he wrote the Song of the New Life. He was really a character. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant man, and incredibly lazy, and incredibly witty. He was a school friend of Baba's before, like in their kids, and he would get away with murder around Baba. And he would do it in such a funny way. He was always getting into trouble, but then he would always kind of get away with it. Like, I think he was the one where Baba had the order he could only smoke 5 cigarettes a day. So his solution was he took like 10 of them, put them together, smoked 5 of those. Or I was just reading where Baba had wanted, to eat your fill. And I forget the expressions, a Gujarati or Hindi expression. Press it down is what it literally means. So Baba Ghani had already eaten something, and Baba has told him, press it down, press it down. So Ghani took food on his plate and went like that, knowing perfectly well what Baba meant. But he was so outrageously funny that he was all the time getting into trouble and would somehow extricate himself by being very funny. Anyway, but he was a master of Sufism, actually. You know what Sufism? Sufism is the mystical branch of Islam. And he was widely read before actually he joined Baba. He knew a lot of Sufi material. Mama, are you acquainted with Sufism at all? Or?
I'm a big fan, yeah.
Yeah. So Ghani was really Baba's resident expert on that. So in May 1947, Baba began dictating to Dr. Ghani what was to become God Speaks. Just prior to this, seemingly not by coincidence, Baba had Dr. Ghani read Hafiz's ghazals to him from late evening until 4 a.m. for 21 days. You know Hafiz, right? The perfect master, Baba's favorite poet, a towering genius of Persian poetry. Ghani appeared to be progressing more slowly than Baba wished in turning the material Baba had dictated into a manuscript. For in February 1948, Baba dictated an agreement that he made Ghani sign before witnesses, promising to finish the book by the end of May 1948. The guy was so lazy. Even this wasn't sufficient to goad Ghani out of his lazy ways, because by November 1948, Ghani had still not finished the book. Baba continued dictating additional points. And I remember Erich Jesawala telling a story about Ghani at this time, where Ghani, Baba was getting impatient because he wasn't finishing up on work, and so Ghani was like, Baba, I'm always so busy, I don't have enough time, But I think Ghani was staying in the ashram then. And Baba, what do you want? Well, he needed a valet. It's like the Mandali were like slaves to Baba, but this guy wants a valet. So darned if Baba didn't get him a valet. So one time Erich said that Baba told Erich to go get Ghani for something or another, and he went into Ghani's room, and the bugger was so lazy that he always would dress nicely with a suit and tie, but when he went to sleep, if he took off a suit and tie, he would have to put it on again when he got up, which he was too lazy to do. So he has his suit and tie, there he was, sound asleep. And the valet was sitting there, obviously under orders, on a stool, waiting for Ghani to wake up. And he had Ghani's toothbrush out there, and the toothpaste from the toothbrush. And Eric said, I couldn't believe he was too lazy even to put his own toothpaste on his toothbrush. So the guy.
Well, he might have been a great economist. I mean, it's how you look at it.
Yeah, he was so lovable because he was so funny. He was so outrageously funny.
When did he die, Funny?
He died in 1951,
Yeah.
and Baba really expressed great regret. He would be fun, it's like in these very severe situations of obedience to Baba, which he actually would do. It was a game. It was a game with Baba. But he would create a lightness about it. When I first was finding out about the Mandali in the 70s, one time I asked Erich, what was Dr. Ghani like? And of course, Erich was like the model of total obedience, the perfect slave. So Erich said, Ghani was the very living embodiment of everything that we weren't supposed to be.
That's Erich's intelligence.
Yeah, but then Erich then told some stories, but Erich said, all this was on the surface. He was a jewel, just a jewel of Baba's. These characters around Baba. So this character played a big role in this, because when then Ivy Deuce first came to meet Baba, Ghani was the link, because Ghani was a Sufi. He was acquainted with it. During the period when Baba was dictating the book to Dr. Ghani, Murshida Ivy Deuce visited Baba for the first time. Baba arranged for Dr. Ghani to be present for this visit and to meet frequently with Murshida Deuce. Dr. Ghani was a Sufi. Murshida Deuce was to be this Murshida of Sufism in America under Mir Baba. This is again from this pamphlet. You can find this right in that pamphlet that I passed down. During this visit, Dr. Ghani went over a lot of Murshida Deuce's Sufi papers, and they had illuminating talks on Sufism. Dr. Ghani was to be Murshida Deuce's contact for correspondence with Baba until his death in 1951. Ghani went on the New Life with Baba and died during the New Life.
How beautiful.
At this meeting, a link in the creation of God Speaks was forged. Dr. Ghani was the writer of the original manuscript, portions of which would be included by Murshida Deuce in the supplement to God Speaks. Murshida Deuce would be an editor and publisher of God Speaks, as it was rewritten by Mir Baba. So in the supplement to God Speaks, you'll see a lot of that was written by Dr. Ghani. Like section 34 on Tawhid, for example, and other things like that. I mean, I'm just presuming it's by Ghani. We're not given an author, but it must be him.
Now, regarding this supplement that was written by Dr. Ghani, it was checked by Baba or not?
I'm not sure. Baba, when he sent it, let's read, there'll be more said about this. I'm not quite sure whether or not, I do find mistakes in it actually. There are things in it that are wrong according to Sufism.
According to Don Estimate,
he
said that it was not edited or checked by Nepal, that segment of God Speaks.
I would believe that myself. Yeah. As in my own studies, as I say, I found things that appear to be simply wrong, just mistakes. So that's, and there are things where we'll read where Baba says stuff that seems to suggest that they could correct things that were erroneous in it.
So Dr. Ghani was Hindu?
No, he was a Muslim.
He was a Muslim, but Indian?
Yeah.
So how would he get the command of language to that,
He was very, very bright. He knew Persian, he knew Urdu. I don't know whether he knew Arabic. I should think most educated Muslims would know enough Arabic to read some of the Quran anyway.
Oh yeah, they do actually.
I don't happen to know, but I would think he would. But I don't know what, like Ibn Arabi, would he have had access to the works of Ibn Arabi? I wouldn't think so. But there's discussion of Ibn Arabi in the supplement. Ibn Arabi was the great perfect master, maybe the greatest mystical philosopher of Sufi Islam.
Yeah.
So in 1952, now the New Life ended at the beginning of 1952, the Mananash phase in January, and then Baba returned. When Baba left on the New Life, they all expected never to see him again. That was the end of all contact with him. But then he came out of the New Life in 1952 and went to America. So in 1952 at Myrtle Beach, during his interview with Murshid Abidus and Francis Brabazon, do you know Francis Brabazon? He was a Australian poet, and he had been a Sufi. I'll be coming back to him in a minute for reasons very relevant to God Speaks. And so he was a Sufi under Abidus at this time. Baba asked Murshid, did you see my chart, The 10 States of God? I dictated all the points to Dr. Ghani. He worked on it, and now I find half of it has not been included. Half has been just as I wanted. I have brought the manuscript here, and when I am free, I will go through the whole thing and make necessary changes. This book will be the first and last of its kind. Baba said that a number of times. Today I will show you just the chart on which the book, is based. And when it is ready, I might hand it over to you to publish. So this is before Baba had dictated God Speaks to Erich, but he was already talking about the 10 States of God chart, which apparently he had already created at this time.
And this meeting was Brabazon and Dus together?
Yes, yes. Baba separated. He sent Francis Brabazon back to Australia and made him the Murshid of Australia.
Wow.
But then Francis wound up never doing that. That's a story of its own. In 1952, yes. I just read this, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
This is the same slide twice. Okay, it seems, let's see, I'm gonna maybe cut some of this short. Ghani, this is more, I'll read a little bit. Ghani is just a most wonderful person. When he died, Baba said, to me more than to any of you, Ghani was unique. And of all the work that still remains to be done for me by others, there is much that could have been done for me by Ghani and no one else. That big head of his was truly a treasure house in which wisdom and wit were blended to perfection.
Wow.
We were intimate friends since our earliest years, and no one knows better than I how courageous and how loyal and loving was his heart. To me, therefore, Ghani is irreplaceable, both as a friend and as a tool for my work. When he died, Baba said it was quite a blow to his work. It would have been so much fun to have him. Boy, I wish he could be getting this. Yeah.
It makes me wonder if Baba was recruited to finish his work. He was like 52 in June, right?
Yeah, he met at the end of 52. Yeah. Want to hear a little story? I can't resist telling a story about Dr. Ghani, just to show what sort of character he was. Baba. They were all supposed to write a little essay on the Avatar. This is in the 40s. And Ghani, they were supposed to come in, let's say, at 9 o'clock to the Mandali Hall, wherever they were. And Ghani had been noticing, I hope this won't shock anybody, but
That's
anyway,
okay.
Ghani had been noticing that Baba was always coming in at 10 after 9, or 9:15. So he was putting the finishing touches on his little essay, so he came in at 10 after 9. That day, Baba had come in at 9:15, and Baba was furious at it, absolutely furious, and called him up and gave him a big slap. Baba would treat his men Mandali this way. And Baba berated him, raked him across what's kind of a donkey are you? You know, Baba could really do a number. And then Baba called him up again. And Ghani assumed that Baba would now give him an embrace. This was not the first time this kind of thing happened with Dr. Ghani. And Baba called him up and boom! And slapped him again. And Baba then said, okay, read out what you've written, you dog, sugar. And Ghani read it out in this cheerful, happy tone of voice as though nothing had happened. Completely poised, unflappable. Ghani was completely shameless, you couldn't put him down. And all of them had then read out what they had written, and Ghani's was the best. And there was a prize. There's another whole story that comes out of this, as a matter of fact. And so when the whole thing was over, Baba said, I had just slapped you like this, and yet you were so unaffected. You read it as though nothing had happened. Weren't you angry at me? And Ghani said, well, Baba, of course I was angry, but since you were my childhood friend, I forgave you. How can you not love somebody like that? You know, that's how Gandhi was. Anyway, one of the great disciples of Meher Baba. I would love it if he could be here right now and give this session to us. Okay, well, jumping past all of that, then in August of '53, Baba began dictating God's speech to Erich Jesawala. Erich jotted down the points and wrote them out at night. The next day he read to Baba what he had written. Baba continued dictating points to Erich in Mahabaleshwar in January of '54. So this is when the key dictation of God Speaks happened. You know Erich Jesawala, he was Baba's right-hand man, you might say, over this period. Again, I'm going to have to put new batteries in. Erich jotted down points, and Baba's dictation to Erich continued through June in Satara. Erich completed his writing work in July. By the way, I remember Erich describing this. He said that he would be writing it out, and Baba would dictate in many languages, actually. And we found the dictation for the first chapter, and it's in Gujarati. So I'm not even sure whether Baba dictated God Speaks in English or not. The first chapter he didn't, apparently.
Wow.
And Erich said I think he was talking about being in Mahabaleshwar. You know Mahabaleshwar, it's a little bit to the south of Mehrabad, 200 miles or so, a hill station. And all the men Mandali were in that room, and they would talk and make noise. So Erich would take a blanket and he would take a lantern and take a blanket. I don't know how he didn't get suffocated, and would sit there and write under this blanket, and would write out what Baba had dictated that time. He didn't even have a desk or anything to write on his lap like that. So that's how it got written out. Bhau Kalchari was given the duty of organizing the material into chapters and getting the manuscript typed. A local typist was hired to type it, working 8 hours a day. Bhau read the material to him as he typed, and the manuscript was finished in about a week. So that's how it first got written up. And then in 1954, in September...
I'm sorry, that was finished in July 1953?
No, in January or whatever this would be, February of 1954.
Or in Mahabaleshwar?
Mahabaleshwar, it appears to be so.
Okay, very good.
Or maybe they went back to Mehrabad. It's not altogether explicit, but around then, in early 1954. And now in 1954, in September, there was a gathering at Mehrabad. Some of you may have seen the film, about the 3 Incredible Weeks. Right. Darwin Shaw narrates it. Yeah. And Baba invited, I forget how many, 25 of his men from the West, right, who were there for them for several weeks. And it culminated, actually when they first got there was a large Darshana program in Ahmednagar, Wadi Park. And it culminated with the declaration called the Final Declaration. So it was a very dramatic period. Yeah. And Lud Dimphal, one of the Sufis, came to it. In September 1954, at the end of the men's meeting, Lud Dimphal was given the manuscript to present to Murshid Adus and Don Stevens to correct the grammar and punctuation and prepare for printing. And there was a letter that accompanied it. I won't take the time to read it, it's in that little pamphlet, but there Baba is giving instructions to them about how Ivy Deuce and Don Stevens are the 2 editors of God Speaks. He told them what they should do and how they should handle it. There were 2 portions. There was the main text, which is the 10 chapters we talked about earlier. And then there was a bunch of material from Ghani, and there's also other stuff there besides Ghani's stuff. That Baba said, you can use this for the supplement if you want. Maybe we, since you raised this, Baba stopped answering. Hence, the manuscript number 2, that's the Ghani material, is far from final, was composed by Dr. Ghani on points and notes given by Baba, revised by Donkin, still has irrelevancies and discrepancies, and also has many very good and interesting points. Baba wishes you to take as main foundation for God Speaks manuscript number 1. That's the 10 chapters of the book, dictated personally by Baba. Leaving the sense in its entirety, he wants you and Dawn to make grammatical corrections, change the English of, alter the formation of any sentence or para you like, delete unnecessary repetitions, etc., etc. In short, present Baba's work in the best way you can. Take from manuscript number 2 any point, article, or chapter you like and think good. Correct any discrepancy you may come across in Sufi's terminology in Ghani's book. So Baba is tacitly recognizing that there may be discrepancies and errors in that material.
In
short, take whatever you like from Ghani's work, add to Baba's manuscript number 1 for the book. Then send to Baba the revised manuscript with any questions you may have. Baba will have it read out to him and will return the final to you for printing. You are allowed to write him in regard to the book, and Baba will clarify any point that is doubtful or not clear. This was written by Mani, Baba's sister. So those are the instructions they got. And God Speaks was published. So this is all the history of God Speaks, right? The textual history. So to review where the manuscript came from and how we know it's Baba's. It was published in 1955, and it came out in November. And this strikes me as being a significant coincidence. During November of 1955, Baba had a Sahabas, 4 one-week Sahabas programs with followers, close lovers of his from around India, in 4 language groups. I think Gujarati, Hindi, Telugu, Marathi, by language group. And they were there for 1 week each. And the very purpose of that was it wasn't for talks or explanations or lectures. It was for the intimacy of love between the lover and the beloved. That was the point. It was, shall we say, the personal aspect of the avatar. The intimacy of that love exchange. The very same month God Speaks was published, which is the absolute opposite. It's the transcendental, impersonal, cosmic, universal aspect of God. It doesn't say anything about love at all. So that strikes me, those 2 opposite sides came into full manifestation in the very same month. So that strikes me, and as I mentioned earlier, God Speaks has almost nothing to say about love. But this Sahabas was all about love. So that historical coincidence in Baba's lifetime strikes me as being a significant one.
Ward, before you go further, what actually strikes me a little bit here, the amount of freedom and kind of a reliance that Baba has on Dawn and Ivy.
Yeah.
In those 2 sentences, it really kind of blows me. Just
Baba,
edit any work that you want, delete whatever,
yeah.
What do you think the reason could have been?
Well, Baba tended to give that kind of discretion to his editors. This is a subject that's very important to me because that's the work I do, actually. But with Francis Brabazon, as we'll see in a minute, Baba asked him to do an edition of God Speaks. He never finished it. And Baba gave him the same kind of instructions. And in the 1920s, there's where Baba says, he's talking about his discourses. I actually took this as an order straight from Baba in working on that project. He said, my discourses, he's talking about the write-ups of what he had dictated, can be recomposed in stylish and forceful language. Stylish and forceful language.
Stylish and what?
Forceful.
Forceful.
Stylish and forceful language, but the spirit and meaning must remain unchanged. So that sounds similar to this. And he told Francis to recompose it without changing any of the facts. So Baba was very particular about the substance and meaning of it not being altered, but he gave editors the latitude to make it read well.
Very nice.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Okay.
From the 1920s to the 1960s, Baba's instructions in that connection seem to have been of that sort. So and now the book got published by Dodd Mead, which is one of the major New York publishers, a reputable, distinguished publisher in New York. At the series of Sahavasis for the 4 language groups in India in 1955, Baba emphasized the importance and unique nature of God Speaks. In his instructions to the attendees, Baba said, "I want you all to take particular note that I would feel happy if each one of you not only possessed, but read and digested God Speaks from the first page to the last page, as the last book of its kind by me. I will likewise be happy if those among you who can possibly do so will see that this work is translated and made available in as many languages as possible for those who cannot read and understand English." By the way, Baba in other places gave the indication he wanted his messages to be translated, and this has been a big issue in the history of the world. I think in Islam it still is an issue translating the Quran out of Arabic, isn't it? I mean, I know it's in English,
Yeah,
but
of course, yeah.
and in
But Quran itself is hardly an original work.
Yeah.
You know, it's been revised by many mullahs. So.
Well, the Bible, I know, or let's say the Vedas, they were real problematic about translating the Vedas out of Sanskrit. It was done finally, but it really took until the Middle Ages. There was a lot of resistance, and the Bible also, same questions arose. In other words, translating Holy Scripture has been an issue in the various religions. Well, now we have it from Meher Baba himself. He said, "Translate my works." There's no question that he wants it.
What other languages is God Speaks in?
Been translated into, you mean? I don't know, but a whole bunch.
German,
Actually,
Spanish,
German,
Farsi, Russian.
Is it in Korean?
Spanish, French, actually, by Don
Chinese.
Stevens. Chinese.
Yeah.
Korean is discourses.
Oh,
Discourses is done in Korean. I
So it's
mean,
been done into a bunch.
Yeah.
That'd be good to come up with a list of it. I don't think it's been translated into Arabic. Because we don't have any Arabic Babylons yet.
no, we want to leave that alone. no Arabic.
No more of that.
You will find God Speaks a very unique book. Never before have such things been disclosed by me. You will understand through your mind the why and wherefore of your being.
You will understand through your mind one more time.
Through your mind, the why and wherefore
Of your
being. That is to say, the biography of the soul, where we came from, where we're going, and what the purpose of creation and what the purpose of our own existence is. All of that is explained there. Now we're starting to come into the second edition. There was a second, most of you probably have the second edition. From glancing around, that's what I see. By the way, the second edition was published in 1973 and was never further revised. That's the final edition. But it was reprinted in a third printing in 1997. And the reason I mention that is, although the text was not altered, the text was reflowed, so all the page numbers are different. So that is germane. Somebody, like I might say, on page 110. But if you have the original second edition, it'll be, I think, at page 117, something like that. So pagination now follows the third printing, but there was no alteration of the text. We've had only 2 editions. So if someone were to say, well, how is it that God Speaks got re-edited? Well, clearly Baba wanted it and indicated that. So as early as 1956, Baba wrote to Murshid Adus about suggestions for future editions of God Speaks. Among them was the following in a letter from Mani that February. Mani is Baba's sister, right? She died in 1996. Now, one thing Baba wants you to do for future editions, and that is to add at the end of the book his previous article, Existence is Substance and Life is Shadow. You'll find that it's item 36 in the supplement. It's in there somewhere. You won't find it. It's not the title of it, but you like go down about a half a page or a page. That message, Baba specifically asked to have that in. This should appear at the complete end of the supplement, sealing the book, as he put it. 1967, during his seclusion in 1967, Baba worked on additions and revisions for a second edition of God Speaks. In 1967, Murshid Adus wrote Baba, saying she would like to include a glossary of Sufi and Vedantic mystic terms in a second edition. Baba approved, and Lud Dimphal worked on it. In the fall of 1967 at Guru Prasad, Baba was checking and correcting a glossary of God Speaks, which Lud Dimphal had prepared. Balna too. Do you know Balna too? He was one of Baba's close lovers. He died about 2000 or 2003, something like that. Would read out every word and its meaning, and when required, Baba would correct a point. Lud included a chart he had drawn lining up all the stages of the spiritual path, and included it with the glossary when he sent it back to Baba. Where did I put my copy of this? Right here. That is, it's attached. I can't pull it out. But it's
So this one that we have is first edition?
Second.
Second.
So this is that chart that he's speaking of. This was prepared by Lud Dimphal and added. If we have time in the very last session, we'll take a look at it. I know it may seem a forbidding chart. It's actually very, very helpful when you learn how to read it. So that wasn't in the first edition, but it was put into the second. Lud included a chart he had drawn lining up the stages of the spiritual path and included it with the glossary when it was sent to Baba. In 1969, this would be after Baba dropped the body at the last darshan, Erich gave everything back to Lud with Baba's corrections and informed Lud that Baba wanted both the chart and the glossary included in the next edition of God Speaks. So if you're wondering where those came from, this is the story. They got Baba's explicit approval. Okay, I'll just skip this, although it's very interesting. Now, there's another part to this story of God Speaks, which I would like to now go into a little bit. Where is it? There. When I went to Australia this is an article that I wrote for the Glow. When I went to Australia in 2010, the Board of Trustees had asked me to go through their archives. And I found a file there that nobody seemed to know about. And as I was reading, it was in Francis Brabazon, Baba's his disciple from Australia. His book, Stay with God, is a masterpiece, and Baba gave great importance to it. Anyway, in 1967, Baba appears to have been dictating to Francis points that he wanted included in a new edition of God Speaks, that Francis was to do, actually. And here are some of the instructions that Baba's. This is all in Francis's handwriting. Now I can expand this a bit. Okay, I know it's a little hard to see, but I'll read it. I can go over here. Several folders with many scraps of paper, a few typed mostly in Francis's handwriting, purport to record points of Baba's dictation presumably in Mandali Hall at Ruprasad in Marazad, on the subject of God Speaks. Happily, Francis was fastidious in dating his records. I think I'm out of focus. Let me correct that. I can do better than this.
What glow was this? Do you happen to know?
What?
What glow? What was produced in?
2010.
Oh, okay.
Maybe summer or something.
Thank you.
So we can ascertain that this work was started on April 15th, 1967 and ran through about February of the next year. The collected material leaves no doubt that Baba wanted Francis, with Erich's help, to prepare a new edition of God Speaks. And towards this end, Baba was giving Francis various pointers and new items of information. While it is indirectly indicated in many places, this assignment from Baba is made entirely explicit in a note dated September 20th, 1967. There, Francis writes, "In the revised edition of God Speaks, the present introduction," that's the introduction you'll find there now by Don Stevens, "is to be A, and B is to be written by me. In B, I have to say that Meher Baba made me re-edit God Speaks without changing the facts. And also that Meher Baba gave important points to be added in the beginning of the book, that I was helped by Erich." And in this file, there are a lot of different points that Baba gave him over this time. And also, there are about 20 pages in Francis's handwriting of re-edited text, about the first 20 pages of God Speaks. And in one of his letters to Ivy Deuce, Francis, I guess Ivy was told about this, and Francis says that Baba had liked his editing. So he was re-editing the text. It was just making the prose flow better. That's the main substance of it. But there are all these points, but what they seem to be is points that Baba wanted Francis to note down that Francis was to ask him about again later, and Baba would develop further. But unfortunately, that never happened. So a lot of them we really don't know about, and we never will, unless the one of you who's hoarding the book, Sean and Aaron and all. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Jay. The three of you who have Baba's book. If it's explained there again, please bring it up, because we'd like to know. But like there's one place where ask Baba about worms and germs and microbes. Do you know what that means? Or the king of the worms. Ask Baba about the king of the worms. Do you know what that is? So we know that there is such a thing, I guess. But what do you do with that? So apparently there are these things Baba wanted to explain. In fact, he wanted Francis to write a new introduction, re-edit the prose, and then incorporate these various points. Like here's, I won't take the time, our session is almost over, but Baba was, he said that, he talked about the dichotomy of nature and habit. Nature in the sense of one's nature, like so-and-so is shy, or so-and-so is generous, like that. People have different natures, and habit. And he said that when you get to the fourth plane, for most people, nature predominates. But if habit predominates, you fall to stone state. Now, what does that mean? So apparently Baba was going to clarify, but never did. So when I was talking about this, Alan Talbot up in San Bay area, he's a lawyer and retired and would be legal cases. So if you fall to stone state, you could file a suit against God because Baba never explained this point that would have saved you. And Alan will take up the case, he said. Or here's another thing that apparently Baba said that the question is raised, are gross, subtle, and mental samskaras qualitatively different from each other, or is it just a deal that when you come to the end of your gross consciousness, the samskaras get very thin and you get subtle consciousness? There's no difference in the samskaras, it's just that they're thinned out. Or are there actually different types of samskaras? Okay, that was the question. And what Baba seems to have said, he didn't answer it directly, but it seems to answer this anyway. He said that when the gross samskaras really get thinned out, all of a sudden the subtle samskaras come into view and you become subtle conscious. So what that seems to suggest is that subtle samskaras are qualitatively different from gross samskaras. There's another point that he gave. And various other things.
Is it ever mentioned how many lives are involved in the subtle inflow?
No formula on that one.
Somebody this morning was just emailing me asking if Baba had ever said how long you linger between incarnations in heaven and hell state, and that's another thing. Does anybody know this?
When we're there, we'll let you know.
Okay. You got the book, I know, Mahu, you're the one. Yeah.
Out of everybody.
Yeah, there are various interesting points. Actually, one of these pages, Francis, right here, he gave a list of all the topics Baba had explained, and so I copied it. I think it starts there, and the page numbers. But there really isn't enough to do a new edition on, because Francis would need to have gone back over these things with Baba, and Baba would need to have explained them. Oh yeah, Baba does say in one of these things, in God Speaks, you'll find in a footnote that there are 3 planets with human life on them. Mm-hmm. But elsewhere, there is a reference, it says there are 18,000 planets with life. Mm-hmm. Well, elsewhere has been said there are 18,000 planets with human life in it. So which is true? In this note, it's quite explicit that there are 18,000 planets with human life on it. And most of them...
Where is this note? I'm sorry.
It's one of Francis.
Oh, Francis's notes.
And it's about a page long, so it's quite... In fact, it might have been reproduced here somewhere. I think it was. Nashwan, who published the article, reproduced these little words. It might be this one. I think so. He also says something about Mahapralaya, actually. Mahapralaya, you know what Mahapralaya is? The annihilation of the universe. It's in Hindu mythology, and Baba indicated it's true. The universe does get swallowed back up into God periodically, and then there's a new creation, a new emergence forth. And he said that Mahapralaya occurs every 14 billion, it's either 14 billion or 14 billion times 14 billion years. I take the previous number as being more probable. As I recall, that's about the age of the universe according to physicists. Yeah. So it could happen. Any 100 million years now could happen. Yeah. So, and he also said, there's a comment that, there are many Earths, that there's one planet that functions as the Earth. The spiritual hierarchy is there. All spiritual involution occurs on that Earth, not elsewhere. There's only one planet where that occurs. And the Avatar comes there. And an Earth, in the course of time, cools off and becomes uninhabitable. In fact, Baba said that the moon had been that. And at that point, a new Earth assumes that position. So there have been lots of different Earths over the billions of years. And Baba said after there's a new Earth and after the first incarnation avataric incarnation on a new Earth, that's when Mahapralaya occurs, which is quite counterintuitive to me.
So that takes that long for the new Earth to come?
Well, I don't know if he said that it happens every time there's a new Earth.
I see.
But Mahapralaya does occur after the first avatar. So there are points like this, kind of odd, surprising sorts of points that
What
Baba...
about those points about Baba mentioning that in some of the planets, or might be Earth, the proportion of intellect
Yes.
or intelligence versus heart?
He said, I think on 90% of these planets, intellect predominates. And a lot of these places, they're very brainy, much brainier than we are. In fact, a lot of the advances in science, Baba said, are in consequence of people from some of those planets coming here. Baba did say, in fact, that scientists, back in the 50s, would discover that there are many universes, for example, and this has become a commonplace recently. But he said that they would discover that there are many universes, but they would never succeed in establishing contact with them. That couldn't be done. But they would come to realize that they're there. Various things like this, Baba said. But then there are a few planets, maybe 10%, where there is a disproportion of heart over head. What you actually need is a balance, where the heart and head are integrated with each other. And that happens on this earth. And that's why spiritual progress can occur here. So,
is that why we heard that some from other planets incarnate here, or some angels, just to have that experience?
yeah, angels, that's a separate case, but a lot of people from other planets are coming here now. And
the one with intelligence.
The great advances of science apparently are in consequence of that happening. So anyway, this is the last chapter in the textual history of God Speaks. Baba, this would be we could have a whole weekend on this if people were sufficiently interested, which will happen one day. That is, what does it say about Baba's words? That apparently Baba himself was not satisfied with God Speaks and wanted a new edition done.
Wow.
And that was also the case of with discourses and various other books of Baba's that he had them re-edited several times. And this material is still there at Avatar's Abode, and we'll have to figure out how to get it published at some point. But right now it's 1 o'clock, time for lunch.
Yeah,
So
we'll have